Hey everybody, I'm Jesse, and welcome to another edition of Gen X Thinks. And today I'm going to talk about the deep state. And when you hear that kind of stuff, you think about conspiracy theories and Big Brother and 1984 and that kind of stuff. But at some point, we've got to acknowledge that there's something else going on behind the scenes. There are other people in charge of our government besides our elected officials, and they are manipulating things behind the scenes. Now, this isn't conspiracy theory. This isn't stuff that's made up. This isn't, all this weird stuff. This is just plain simple facts, and all it takes is a little bit of research to figure it out. And I just watched an episode of Joe Rogan's podcast, episode 2237, and his guest was a guy named Mike Benz. And he basically talked the whole time. Joe Rogan would interject with a sentence once every 5 minutes or something like that. But this guy just rattled off a bunch of stuff. Really good information about the deep state and the CIA. He's like some kind of ex-CIA thing, and he's exposing a lot of this stuff. And it was a really good episode, and I highly advise you to check it out. But as we delve into this, if you're watching this episode of Gen X Thinks, I highly encourage you to go check out Rumble. It's a video platform like YouTube, but they're about free speech, non-censorship. They don't regulate so much about what's being said. They don't shadow ban and all this stuff, and they don't silence certain opinions. As long as you're within the confines of the First Amendment, they pretty much let it go. But it's a good, high-quality platform, and I highly suggest you go check it out. I'll leave the link in the description, too. Anyway, this guy, if you don't have the time to listen to the entire 3-hour episode of Joe Rogan, I'll kind of briefly summarize a few points here that he made, and then talk about some other stuff as well. But he basically explained how and why the United States government started injecting their hooks into social media. And it really became a real thing when Trump won in 2016. That's when they had already been doing it throughout the world in other countries to foment resistance to their governments. If their government wasn't playing ball the way the United States government wanted them to, they would incite insurrection and stuff like that through social media. But once Trump won, they realized that they needed to turn it onto the United States. So since then, that's what we've seen. We've seen him turn around and inject that into the United States. And that's pretty much what social media is now, is government-controlled media. That's what we have. Anybody who says the wrong thing that isn't in line with what the government wants is censored. They're deplatformed in some cases. And that's just the world we're living in now. If you don't understand that yet, then you're behind the times, and you need to realize what's actually going on. And you also need to realize why freedom of speech is so important. We need to have the freedom to question our government, to point out the bad actors, to point out the bad things that are being done by our government. If we don't have that freedom, then we live in a tyranny. And that's just a simple fact. And we're getting into 1984 kind of mind virus stuff, where they're manipulating the language. You hear this hot word democracy all the time. Now, inside the government, democracy is not democratic. It's not like the people voting, and that's not what democracy means inside the deep state. Democracy means whatever the deep state wants. whatever their objective is, that's democracy. So free and open elections is anti-democracy. That goes against their will for the future of the United States and Western civilization. So that's why you hear all this stuff. We're out fighting for democracy, and it's completely obvious that they are not. They're against democracy. The number of free democratic societies that the United States government has just obliterated is insane. It's scary to think about all the stuff that the United States government, in cooperation with the British government and other, it's a whole thing when you get up above. But they use more than just the United States government to do it. But they just destroy democracies, democratic countries that are completely free and prosperous, and they're happy. The people are happy. They're just chugging right along, but they don't get in line with what the United States and the UN wants them to be. What the United States and the UN wants them to do. They don't get in line. They don't get in lockstep. Or they'll go in and just dismantle their democracy and institute a dictatorship. And this is happening. It's happening right now. We all know about this thing over there. That's this war that's going on overseas right now that we're heavily involved in. That was a democracy. They basically installed a president and then told the people, we're postponing elections indefinitely. And that's what the people are saddled with over there right now. And that's all due to the UN and United States, Britain, those governments. Not the people of those countries, the governments of those countries, the deep state of those countries. But people have been outcast and shunned and called crazy for suggesting that there's a deep state or some kind of big brother. Now, many times I forget how many times I've been talking about something and then pick up my phone and my phone is showing me an ad for that thing I was just talking about. Once is a coincidence. But once you've seen it so many times and about really weird random stuff, just something that'll pop up in conversation, but then an ad comes up that you've never shown any interest at all in, you know what I mean? So we're being listened to, we're being monitored, and to think that the same government that is coercing these big companies into censoring us isn't coercing them into, giving up information about us that's just naive. And being aware of this kind of behavior, being aware of this kind of stuff is paramount. It's very important, because it will, hopefully, this knowledge will give people the incentive to act, to stand up against it, because this administration is not going to have the time to clear all of this out. When you hear this guy explain it and all these different tentacles of these regulators, these agencies that run throughout the government, and how they're all entwined, and how all these different agencies channel money to the CIA to fund all this stuff. It'll take years. It'll take years to do that now. And the way he said it was that it was actually Jimmy Carter, when he got in there, he dismantled the CIA. He got rid of it completely. And I know that we all look back on the Reagan years with a lot of fond memories because they were good years, but Reagan brought it back. Now, he could have very possibly brought it back for good reasons, because he was in the Cold War and all that. But as he brought it back, the people involved in that realized that it had been dismantled. So legally, through paperwork and all this nonsensical shit, it's not a real organization because it had been dismantled. So it can't be dismantled again. You can't kill someone twice. They can't. So you've got to go through the entire thing and pluck out all of the threads, every single thread, and chase down every single thread to get rid of this shit. So it's a really convoluted, by purpose, by design. It's convoluted and almost untraceable organization inside of an organization, made up of many other organizations. And then all of these words that we're hearing now, all of this stuff, this double speak, like I said earlier, democracy, we're hearing these words now, and they're meant to fool us. They're meant to keep us confused. They're meant to keep us trusting our government. In that episode of Joe Rogan, the guy shows clips of these government officials training the tech people, right? The programmers and stuff, the people who are in charge of censorship and all that. They show an example of Donald Trump. He just posted the words witch hunt, and they explain why this is misinformation. Now, he was the sitting president at the time, and the government, this organization inside the government is explaining to the tech people why that should be censored, why the sitting president should be censored. Now, if that's not deep state, I don't know what is. Now, this is just plain truth and facts. I'm not making up any conjectures. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm just relating truth and facts that I've learned here recently. Everyone should be aware of. And the biggest question to me is, why are they so shady? Why do they hide from us? Why do they keep all this shit behind smoke and mirrors and behind, do this shit in the shadows? Why don't they just come out and tell us that they're doing, if what they're doing is right? Why don't they just come out and tell the American people, this is what we're doing, we're censoring you, this is why. We're censoring the President of the United States, this is why. Because I know the answer, because it's wrong. What they're doing is wrong. So they have to do it from the shadows. They have to manipulate and connive and lie, or the people wouldn't stand for it. But if you brainwash the people into thinking what you're doing is right, at least a significant portion of them, then they're on your side and they're fighting for what you want, what you're trying to obtain. So not only are we fighting against this deep state, this shadow government, we're fighting against all the people that this shadow government has brainwashed. And that is by design. And there's no other, it's just simple fact. There's no other way to look at it. And this is the time. We were, in my opinion, Gen X was built for this shit. We grew up, we were young enough to understand technology and get into it. And now we're old enough and wise enough to know the truth from bullshit. And now it's up to us to stand up and for what is right. Because after us, there's no one else. When we're gone, there's no one else. And just, you can even say, hey, I don't have any kids, I don't have any grandkids to worry about. But you still should not want these scumbags to maintain control and to have success manipulating and screwing over people for hundreds of years into the future. Just to stop the scumbags from doing scummy shit, ruining people's lives, ending people's lives, destroying peaceful governments, destroying peaceful nations. That needs to stop. But the most evil people in the world are getting away with it successfully because we don't want to be bothered to take the time to stop it. We don't want to be bothered to take the time to learn the truth. A lot of us grew up watching Batman and reading Batman comics and seeing Batman movies, and we root for the hero, the underdog. We don't root for the conniving, manipulative person who's trying to destroy the world. And we cheer when the underdog, the little guy, stands up and fights against tyranny and fights against darkness. But when it's our time, when we're being called to stand up and rage against that shit, we don't have time. On just general principle, I don't want them to win just because they don't deserve to. I'd rather see many other hardworking people out there win and have successful, good, free lives than see these scumbags get their way. They're already fighting Donald Trump tooth and nail on his cabinet. Everybody he's picking, they're fighting against. Now, do you remember all the turmoil and hostility that Joe Biden got when he picked his cabinet? All the rage that ensued after, when he started naming his cabinet? No, there was no rage because nobody fought him. He picked his cabinet and went through. Obama picked his cabinet and went through. Bush picked his cabinet and went through. Everybody picks their cabinet and they just glide right through except for Trump. There's something there. It's not just a coincidence. They balk him, they stall him, they try to hamstring him every step of the way. And it's not the presidency, it's not the Democrats, it's not the Republicans, it's not the left, it's not the right, it's the deep state. And all of those political, unelected bureaucrats in there are the deep state. And they, through corporate lobbying and all this shit, control the elected officials, a lot of them. So it doesn't matter if you vote for a Republican, if he's been in there for 50 years and he's getting, I don't know what, $5-10 million a year from Microsoft or from Amazon or from Pfizer. You think who's he going to listen to? His constituents or the people paying his bills? Now, he's still got to talk sweet to his constituents and talk about why he did this dumb shit and how it was in the name of democracy. And I hear this stuff about, and I completely agree with it, about the term limits for these people. And there should be term limits. They should get 2 terms, period, end of story. But it's not just completely up to the letter of the law that they only get 2 terms. We can do it. We can give them 2 terms and that's it. That's all they get. We can start a movement, 2 terms. After their second term, the end of their second term, if they haven't started being the solution, then they're part of the problem. They need to be kicked out by us, the voters. We are a constitutional republic, but we do have real democratic elections. That is democracy. Electing our officials to represent us. Not this bullshit deep state definition of democracy that they're sending people over to die for. So I think that the people should start implementing a term limit. Vote them out. If they're not fixing stuff in there, then they are part of the problem. And they've been in there too long that we can't, after they're in there for so long, we can't be sure that they aren't bought, they aren't bribed, they aren't blackmailed. They should be in there for 2 terms and get out. That's it. And we could easily do it. All it takes is to check another box on the ballot. It's that simple. And I'll leave you there with that. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and comment. And check us out on Rumble. Support free speech and non-censorship. If you'd like to become a member of Gen X Thinks, I'll put that link down in the description. Or you can head over to the channel page and become a member that way. If you'd like to support the channel directly, you can do so by clicking on that super thanks button down there. Thank you very much for those of you who do that. I sincerely appreciate it. Or you can head over to Buy Me a Cup of Coffee and buy me a cup of coffee. Thank you very much for those of you who do that. I really appreciate that too. If you're interested in Gen X gear, you can head over to Redbubble and check out the stuff we have over there. Gen X Thinks and Gen X branded stuff. T-shirts, coffee mugs, stickers, all kinds of cool stuff over there. I'll put that link down in the description as well. If you can't or don't want to support the channel in any of those ways, you can always do so by sharing these videos on your social media. And that's very important in an information war, in a cultural war. So I applaud those of you who've been doing that. Thank you very much. And as always, stay frosty, Gen X, and I'll see you on the next one.